King David died peacefully at an old age, after reigning for 40 years, and he was buried with honor in the city of David. His reign ended with the nation secure and his son Solomon chosen as his successor. But his life was a tapestry of victories and failures. As a young shepherd, he killed Goliath with only a sling and a stone, proving that faith in God triumphs over any enemy. He united Israel, brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, and expanded the kingdom's borders. He wrote psalms that still inspire worship and prayer today. Yet, David's sin with Bathsheba and the arranged death of her husband brought lasting consequences to his family. Despite his flaws, he remained humble before God, always returning in repentance. In the end, David's life teaches us that God values a repentant heart over perfection. King Saul's life ended in despair when he fell on his own sword during a battle against the Philistines. His 3 sons died alongside him, and his body was desecrated by his enemies. His tragic death symbolized the fall of a king who began with promise but ended in ruin. Saul was Israel's first king, chosen by God and anointed by Samuel. He had the stature, strength, and leadership to lead Israel, and at first he won key victories. But disobedience poisoned his reign. He refused to fully obey God's commands, grew jealous of David, and spent years trying to kill him out of envy. The Spirit of the Lord departed from him, and he lived in torment and fear. His desperation led him to consult a medium for guidance, directly defying God's law. Saul's story is a sobering reminder that pride and rebellion can strip away God's favor and bring destruction. King Solomon's end came with his kingdom intact, but his heart compromised. Though he died in wealth and honor, God had already declared that the kingdom would be divided after his death because of his unfaithfulness. Solomon began with unmatched promise, asking God for wisdom instead of riches, and was blessed with both. He built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, and kings and queens from across the world came to marvel at his wisdom and prosperity. His writings in Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs reflect a brilliant mind guided by God. Yet, his later years were marked by compromise. He married many foreign wives, who led him into idolatry and false worship. The man who built the temple also built altars to other gods. His end teaches us that success and wisdom mean little if the heart strays from God, and his legacy is a mix of glory and warning. King Ahab's life ended violently when he was struck by an arrow in battle, despite disguising himself to avoid being targeted. Dogs licked his blood just as the prophet Elijah had foretold, fulfilling God's judgment. Ahab's reign was one of wickedness and compromise. He married Jezebel, who brought Baal worship into Israel and killed God's prophets. Under his rule, the nation fell deep into idolatry. He built altars to Baal and angered God by leading Israel into sin. Yet even in his rebellion, God gave him moments of warning through prophets like Elijah. The famous showdown at Mount Carmel, where fire fell from heaven, showed the power of the true God over Baal. Though Ahab sometimes showed fear and humility, he never fully repented. His death on the battlefield sealed his legacy as one of Israel's most corrupt kings, a man who chose compromise over faithfulness. King Hezekiah died peacefully and was honored with burial in the upper tombs of the sons of David, remembered as one of Judah's most faithful kings. His life was marked by trust in God and bold reforms. He tore down idols, cleansed the temple, and restored true worship in Judah. When the Assyrian king Sennacherib threatened Jerusalem, Hezekiah turned to God in prayer, and God miraculously delivered the city by sending an angel to destroy the enemy army overnight. Hezekiah even experienced a personal miracle. When he was near death, God extended his life by 15 years in response to his prayers. Yet pride also tested him. He showed his treasures to envoys from Babylon, which later led to judgment on his descendants. Still, his reign was one of trust, courage, and devotion, and his peaceful end reflected a life lived faithfully before God. Crowned King Josiah honored God. King Josiah's end came tragically in battle when he was killed by Pharaoh Necho's army at Megiddo. Despite his early death, he was remembered as one of Judah's greatest reformers. Josiah became king at just 8 years old and sought God with a pure heart. He tore down idols, smashed altars to false gods, and led Judah back to the worship of the true God. During his reign, the book of the law was rediscovered in the temple, and when Josiah heard it read, he tore his clothes in repentance and led the nation in a covenant to follow God. His Passover celebration was one of the most significant in Israel's history. Though his death seemed untimely, his life was a testimony of zeal and passion for God. Josiah's legacy reminds us that even in a corrupt generation, One leader devoted to God can spark revival. Crown King Belshazzar rebelled against God. King Belshazzar's end was sudden and violent. He was killed the very night he mocked God by drinking from the sacred vessels taken from Jerusalem's temple. That same night, Babylon fell to the Medes and Persians, just as the prophet Daniel had foretold. Belshazzar's reign was short and arrogant. At his infamous feast, he praised the gods of gold, silver, and stone while dishonoring the true God. In response, a mysterious hand wrote words on the palace wall. Min Tekel Parsin, declaring his kingdom numbered, weighed, and divided. Despite knowing his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar's story of pride and repentance, Belshazzar chose arrogance. His end was not just the fall of a king but the fall of an empire, showing how quickly God can bring down the proud. Crown Pharaoh of Egypt rebelled against God. Pharaoh's end came in destruction when he pursued the Israelites into the Red Sea, only to see the waters crash down and drown him and his army. His downfall was the climax of his stubborn refusal to let God's people go. Pharaoh witnessed plague after plague. The Nile turned to blood, frogs, darkness, hail, and the death of Egypt's firstborn. But each time he hardened his heart. His arrogance set him against God himself, and his power could not save him. Though worshipped as a god by his people, Pharaoh learned that he was powerless before the true God of Israel. His end at the Red Sea became one of the most famous demonstrations of God's power in history. Pharaoh's life is a warning that pride and stubbornness against God always lead to destruction. Crown King Herod the Great rebelled against God. King Herod the Great's end was filled with misery and paranoia. He died a painful death, suffering from disease, after a reign marked by cruelty and fear. Herod is remembered for trying to kill the infant Jesus by ordering the massacre of babies in Bethlehem, an attempt to protect his throne from a child. Though he was a skilled builder, known for reconstructing the temple in Jerusalem, his reign was overshadowed by bloodshed. He killed members of his own family, including his wife and sons, out of suspicion. His attempt to destroy the Messiah failed, and his death was seen as divine judgment. Herod's life shows the futility of fighting against God's plan, and his miserable end reflects a legacy of cruelty and pride. Crown King Herod Agrippa I rebelled against God. King Herod Agrippa I's end was gruesome. He was struck down by an angel of the Lord and eaten by worms because he accepted worship as a god instead of giving glory to the true God. His death was public and humiliating, serving as a divine warning. Agrippa had persecuted the early church, killing James the Apostle and imprisoning Peter. He sought the approval of the people and reveled in his power. But his arrogance reached its peak when he allowed the crowd to hail him as a god during a public speech. At that moment, judgment fell. His sudden and horrifying death was a direct answer to his pride and cruelty. Agrippa's story stands as a stark reminder that no ruler can steal God's glory and escape his judgment.